Hello, everyone. Just need to notify all of you that the angry astronaut has been assassinated by the Jeff Bezos fan club, and I'll be standing in for him today. Hope everyone is doing well, and can you hear me? Oh, no! Good. I'm very glad everyone can hear me. So, good morning or good afternoon to those of you in Europe, and good evening to our friends on the other side of the planet. To this live stream event being held at an unusual time for the benefit of our friends at To the Future, who are having their own live stream event, and so I'm doing one at this time in order to to take care of this. And yes, as I mentioned, Andy, Angry Astronaut has been successfully assassinated by the Jeff Bezos fan club, so I'll be standing in for him from here on out. So anyway, I hope yes, big change, huh? So yes, there comes a time when everybody feels like they need to have a have a transformation, and that was me yesterday. So yeah, it might have been Boeing that did it. Not so sure. Thanks very much, Warhawk. I appreciate that. So yeah, it's been a very long time since I've been without facial hair, years and years. Yes, no more snoods, as they're called in Britain. When I that actually the old mask I used to wear had Stonehenge markings on it, and I got it at Stonehenge almost exactly a year ago. Now was the last time that I was in Britain. Thank you, Framrick. I appreciate it. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, that's what my son said as well, as far as my weight loss is concerned. Yeah, so no, the sunglasses will definitely be here. Just trying to decide which ones I'm going to use. I've got a few to choose from. But no, I'll definitely be using the sunglasses. I can't see very well. I tried the first live stream that I attempted. I tried to do it with the sunglasses, and it just didn't work out. But hey, I haven't even seen what it all looks like. Ah, yeah. Not bad at all. Yeah. That ought to work out. Okay. Yes, maybe I could sneak into to Blue Origin. So anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm gonna stop talking about myself and my transformation and all this weirdness, but it probably will be freaking some people out for a while. All of that having been said, I decided that there was a statement that Elon Musk made recently about us all having to learn how to live under glass domes, that we're going to have to adjust to that kind of lifestyle if we're going to successfully colonize the red planet. I found that to be an interesting statement. And so I decided that, why not? Let's go ahead and do a topic on it. So, is it the AI needed for Mars? I did not actually see the GTP3, so I'm interested to see get some details about that. I've actually just been either spending time with my son over the last few days, and also researching the heck out of what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to kind of go back to my next video is going to be going back to the topic of things that can kill you on Mars and things that probably won't, and all the misconceptions associated with that, and why it pisses me off so much that we have so many misconceptions about Mars. And so that will be kind of connected together. And yeah, it is. He did say glass domes rather than lava tubes, and just about every every depiction that's made of Elon Musk's view of his Martian city is on the future rather than in some vast cave network. But this doesn't necessarily have to be a debate of living, below ground, living above ground. I don't think that that's, necessarily as important. You could do either, in order to successfully have a million person colony. The fact of the matter is what all do you need in order to make it all work? Those are the things that we need to transparent aluminum. Yes, Framrick, we do actually have that sort of thing, interestingly enough. I wonder if we were working on that when the particular movie that mentioned it brought it about. I wonder if we were working on that particular thing. Yes, statically charged to repel dust. I think that's going to be important. That's something that's going to be focused on a lot in my upcoming video that will hopefully be released today if all goes well. I'm going to be a very busy person for the rest of the day. But in any event, that's, dust storms, the danger that they represent, and then the mythological danger that they represent is something that I want to talk about in both cases. When we talk about the dangers that the dust represents to our power sources, well, there's lots of solutions to that. I think we'd be pretty damn stupid to have only one source of power on Mars anyway. To just go with solar and no backup, that would be about the stupidest thing that I could imagine. So I mean that's something that I think that is an overblown threat. However, to say that dust storms don't represent a significant danger to your day-to-day life on Mars, in my opinion, and I'll be saying this in the video as well, you are far more likely, I think, as a Martian colonist, unless you never venture outside of your dome, to be killed by a Martian dust storm or a Martian dust devil than you are to die of radiation. That you'll probably die of something like that before radiation is going to kill you. And yet nobody talks about the clear and present danger that dust storms can represent. And instead, they just keep talking about stuff like radiation, which is a completely overblown. I'm not saying it's a non-existent threat, but it's an overblown threat. It's a much greater threat on the moon, and it's a much greater threat in interplanetary travel, but it's not near the threat on the surface of Mars that everybody talks about. Sunlight is important, says another space nut. Thanks for being here, by the way, but underground, and to have a solar collector run the sunlight through fiber optics to an artificial skylight. That's a good solution. And, maybe that's enough for us. And honestly, I think that, and that's another thing I'm going to be talking about, what are some of the things that could kill you on Mars? And I think that psychiatric issues are something that could, present a problem. None of us can really honestly say what it's going to feel like after 10 years of not being able to go outside without an EVA suit. No one knows what that's like on this planet. Nobody's ever experienced that. What's it really going to be like, and what kind of long-term impact is that going to have on us to, be locked inside an EVA suit every time you go outside to explore this magnificent, and yes, Cyclonics, I was familiar with the movie name. I'm just trying not to attract undue attention on YouTube. Yeah, the long-term effects that it's going to have on us, we don't know. It's a complete guess. as to what an alien planet is going to do to our day-to-day psyches. How about modular Alon transparent sheets, hexagonal cell, but linked a meter apart, double paneled, and water between them, oxygenated. It's a great idea, Framrick. Fill the gap with water, photoplankton, algae, and krill to feed on the algae, maybe even fish. UV promotes algal growth. Krill eat the algae. Fish eat both. Radiation shielding, and food. And wonderful to see fish swimming overhead. My God, Framrick, what a cool idea. And that's one of the reasons why I like to have these live streams, is so people can come up with these, intriguing notions, these ideas. I mean, it'd be like living inside an aquarium all day, in a sea aquarium of some kind with fish swimming overhead. My God, that would be the coolest damn thing. Warax is a Martian storm about the same intensity of fog here on Earth. It depends on what kind of fog you're talking about, but actually, from what I've seen from the camera views, from the probes that went through it, it's more similar to a blizzard whiteout, a little closer to that than to fog. You're gonna have a hard time seeing your hand in front of your face. That's one of the big dangers represented by dust storms, is the lack of visibility, almost complete lack of visibility. One of the big dangers of getting caught in the middle of one of those. Cyclonic says you wouldn't die from acute radiation sickness on Mars, cancer eventually. That's true. And that's if you stayed, exposed all the time and never had any shielding. If you just sat outside in your spacesuit all the time, which nobody is going to do. It was estimated recently that you could spend several hours a week. We're talking about 10 hours a week or so on the surface in just your spacesuit every week for 60 years on Mars, and only have a 5% chance of dying of cancer after a 60-year time frame. So it's just overblown. It really is. That's one of a number of things that yes, and dust storm. Going Ballistic says dust storms are also overblown. That's true. There is no danger represented whatsoever from the strength of the wind. You would barely feel it against you. One thing that is dangerous about it, though, is the well, there's a number of things that are dangerous about them, but the electrostatic nature of the dust, the clinging nature of it, the fact that it can cling to your visor even. I read a very extensive report that was put together by the NASA Safety Commission, I believe, about dust storms, and how the dust could start to accumulate and adhere to your visor, completely eliminating your visibility. Some scary stuff. So that's dust storms can definitely represent a problem, just not in the ways that we talk about, not in the ways that anybody thinks about it. And that's a problem. We need to focus on what the real dangers are, and not, on what the theoretical dangers are. We can all prepare with a sleepover at a Sea Life Center. That would be an amazing thing. Yeah. Framix says, do you think all suit access to Mars surface EVA should use suit ports so you never track perchlorate laden dust inside? Yes, I do. However, that's still going to be an issue. There's still going to be situations where you need to bring things that are larger than an EVA suit inside a habitat, and you're going to have dust mitigation strategies for all of that. And, one of the best ones that's been proposed is there are certain types of bacteria that devour the perchlorates and produce oxygen as a byproduct. And it's not a dangerous bacteria by any stretch of the imagination. In my opinion, a bacteria like that already exists on Mars, which is why we have such a strangely high level of oxygen on that planet. one of the many indicators of life. I think there's already something that subsists off the perchlorates on Mars right now. But that's just my opinion. Um, Thank you. I appreciate that. Wow. Thanks. Thank you. They just did the AI chat for the GPT-3. Appreciate you putting the link on there. That's pretty cool. Yes, Rocket Nerd. I did get angry with a whole lot of things actually to make a change, but thanks. I'm glad you think it looks good. Okay, Framrick says, should we genetically engineer crops to take advantage of the perchlorate-laden soil, perhaps even engineer bacteria to produce methane from the soil, CO2? Imagine a Sabatier bioreactor, no need for solar panels, just set up biobanks. They use the sunlight and implanted chlorophyll, produce the methane for fuel for us. Hell yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of ways that, and as most of you know at this point, that I firmly believe that life exists on Mars, and bacterial life at the very least, and possibly multicellular. It has been said now, not by crazies, but by people who have examined the state of the salty brines and water that exists subsurface, the saltwater lakes that have now been detected subsurface on Mars, that could possibly support multicellular life and not just monocellular. So yeah, I think that we can work in concert with whatever life that we find there to help us produce more of what we need. There's so many things we can even the bacteria that devours perchlorates here on Earth can also produce the substances that allow us to create solid rocket fuel. Even that is doable. Perchlorates can actually be a really good thing for colonizing Mars if you just use them properly. But you also have to take into account, of course, that they are dangerous. That perchlorates are, of course, poisonous. Andy says, interesting. How do you eliminate the danger of static generation and refueling operations on Mars? Yeah, static. I would say that dust storms are just going to be an ongoing issue. I think that we need to, as best we can, to lock down and ride those things out and do our best not to go out into them, at least until we have studied them in depth. There's just too much of a potential for a static discharge to occur that could screw up your EVA suit, could screw up all kinds of things. So much of our day-to-day life is going to be absolutely dependent on our technology working, every minute of every day. And so having any issues in terms of having any issue or anything that's going to create an electrostatic discharge can potentially be a problem. And we found that to be the case on Phobos too, for entirely different reasons. But the ions there can produce electrostatic discharges. This is a very alien world that we're talking about. Johnny Spacer says we need to deal with statically charged dust. We could find a way to negatively charge spacesuits. Good idea. Static charged dust is negatively charged. Another negative charge would repel other negative charges. Yes, I would say that's probably a good idea. Sabatier, yes, that's correct. Going ballistic. However, I'll tell you, there are so many people saying Sabatier at this point, including, by the way, the fellow who did the Mars Direct 3.0, even he says it the way I say it. So of course he's Spanish, not French, but all I can say is that yes, it's Sabatier, but a lot of people say it's Sabatier. So I don't know how to talk about that in that regard. All I know is that I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, at least if folks who are familiar with the process. Ouija Lego. Hello. I'm not certain if you have ever been on the show before. If not, welcome. And thank you for being here. Life exists all over the solar system. I could not agree with you more. This is going to be I think that as time goes on, and I've said this before, we are going to discover that life is as natural a part of the development of a solar system as gravity is, almost as natural. We're going to find, at least bacterial life all over the place on the Jovian moons, even in places like Triton, all the way out in Neptune, subsurface on Pluto, anywhere where life can take hold after billions and billions of years of just random chance. Something is going to crop up, at least bacterial life. It's just going to prove to be a natural part of the development of a solar system. Intelligent life is a different matter, of course, but as far as just life, I think it's all over. I agree with you, Ouija Lego. And thanks for being here. Eric Space, hello. Thank you very much for coming by. I appreciate you paying me a visit. I think I'm gonna send you a DM, by the way. There's some things I'd like to talk to you about, but we'll talk about that later. So says Framric, if we discover Martian bacteria that's currently alive and not fossil, should we potentially contaminate or terraform Mars? Do we risk being a do-nothing species, or is it full steam ahead, humanity first? And he also says, by the way, I'm in favor of spreading out. Otherwise, we might as well not bother exploring space. And then also, Framric makes a reference to Eric Space, I guess. Eric Space, I'm not sure exactly. It's ERCXSPACE. And the reason I spell all that out is because he does some very cool renders of the starship and other things that I could never create. So in any event, it's great to have you drop by. And if you ever want to deal with a Mars biodome render with the starship next to it, you come to the right place. To answer your question, Framric, I think that the life that's currently on Mars, what's left over from what existed there before. So terraforming Mars is actually going to return Mars to its natural state, to the way it used to be. And I think that whatever life is currently there is going to be able to help us to adapt to going back to the way Mars used to exist. I think that this life was there before, when Mars was far more hospitable. And what is still there now is just what is left over from what was there before. So I think that we can work in conjunction with what's there. We don't have to worry about contamination, I don't think, because I believe, first of all, that any life that survived on Mars is going to be able to survive whatever we throw at it. If it can survive perchlorates and radiation, it can survive anything man can do. So I think that the life on Mars can help us rather than us have to worry about damaging it or contaminating it or whatever. I think that we can make, Martian life and us, our form of life, just work together, as I think we're kind of meant to do. The solar system is one giant ecosystem, and I'm not the only one who thinks that. Dr. Levin from the Viking expedition also believes that we are one giant ecosystem, the solar system is, and we swap life back and forth through meteorites and such. And so I do believe that ultimately that's just what's going to happen is we'll all kind of become of that part of that huge multi-planet ecosystem, assuming we get off of this damn planet first, that is. What processed good or minerals will, in your opinion, will be the first ship back to Earth? Rock samples don't count, or the first good mineral that will be first shipped back to Earth? Boy, that's that'll be a good question. A mineral, that's an interesting one. I'm not certain if Mars is going to be as useful to Earth in terms of exploiting it from a mineralogical standpoint as it's going to be from its ability to exploit the asteroid belt. I think that all of the incredibly valuable things that are available in the asteroid belt are what's going to make Martians very rich. Because, as I've said a number of times before, from a delta V standpoint, it's easier to go to the asteroid belt from Mars than it is to go from Earth to the moon. So I think Mars is going to take very much a huge advantage of that. Andy says, agreed, treat dust storms the same as cosmic ray events from a safety point of view. Yeah, very much so, Andy. I think so. Until we understand more about them anyway. If they prove to be a lot less dangerous than we suppose they might be, then maybe it's not as big of a deal. But we definitely need to keep that in mind. And Going Ballistic just made a mention about Zubrin, but I'm not. I'm sorry. I guess I didn't connect that, but I'll figure it out eventually. Cyclonics is the main resources that will be mined is water. Transporting it to a base will require large mining equipment assembled on Mars and filters to get rid of the regolith. Sounds pretty tough. Yeah. That it will be. I would say that it is a huge resource, though. By the way, there is a lot of water on Mars, a lot of water. Just the polar ice caps have enough water to cover the entire planet in several meters, or I think at least 1 meter worth of water. And that's just the polar ice caps. And there's a lot of subsurface water. Some lakes the size of Texas. There's a hell of a lot of water there, way more than there is on the moon. And I think that's going to make a big difference. Well, thank you, Tartan, Texas. Appreciate that. They just made a mention about how I'm looking today. So, okay, Colonize Mars. Hello. Thanks for coming by. There's so many problems to Mars colonization, but so many solutions too. So I think Elon and SpaceX will start the first settlement. They'll play it by ear. In a lot of ways, I think they'll have to. There's a lot of things that we just don't understand, and it's going to take us too long to figure all of it out. There's going to be things that take us by surprise, and lives will be lost. There's no way around that. But you know what? I'd like to make a comparison between the number of lives that may be lost in colonizing Mars versus the number of lives that were required to colonize the North American continent. It's not even going to be close, not even remotely close in terms of the human cost of just colonizing the North American continent. And that was on a planet where we could breathe the air and just grow food out of the ground once we got there. So obviously our technology was a lot worse back then, but still, oh, that's cool. Yes, the blue moon being dropped by the lunar starship. That's pretty cool. Yes, Mars is basically post-apocalyptic in a lot of ways. Yeah, it very much is. The only way Blue Origin will currently make it past the Kármán line. Yes, I agree. Let's have a lunar starship take the blue moon. That's what this little diagram shows, or this little picture shows. That's the way only way Blue Origin's going to make it into orbit is if SpaceX carries them up there. Okay, yeah, Jeffu. Blue Moon lander arrives on the moon courtesy of the lunar starship. Yes, I really like that picture. I saw that on Twitter not too long ago. Johnny says Spacer says sell Martian sea salt to Earthlings, a byproduct from our mining water. What an idea! That's a fantastic idea. Martian sea salt. I think that will definitely go over very well. Thank you, Cully, by the way. Really appreciate what you just said. Unobtainium. Yes, we'll find that. Cyclonic says something interesting to think about the perchlorate eating bacteria is if all they do is consume the soil, why haven't they eaten it all already? Does the bacteria have predators? I suspect it's because there just isn't a lot of that bacteria that's currently on Mars. It's just not Mars is a hostile environment, and so I think that it is difficult for life to take hold. And so the presence of parts per million of bacteria in the soil is just not all that high. And so I think that the number of bacteria that currently exist versus the perchlorates being created by the natural processes on Mars that do create them is an imbalance. And so that's, in my opinion, that's why is we just don't have enough bacteria to do the job currently, but we could change that. Now, another possibility, you just mentioned predators, maybe so. There's every reason to believe that there's more than one kind of bacteria on Mars. There are Russian scientists who believe that there are these extremophiles, as they call them here on Earth, that can survive vacuum, incredible amounts of cold, extreme amounts of radiation, all that. A complete evolutionary mistake. And yet they exist. Why? And in their opinion, they exist because they were brought here on meteorites from Mars. That's why they think those things are here, which again fits in well with Dr. Levin's theory that we're all part of one giant ecosystem. The mad lawyer says we wouldn't exist without the gravitational effects of Jupiter or Saturn versus the sun, which reconfirms the solar ecosystem theory. Yeah, very good point, mad lawyer. Yeah, we kind of need everything that's currently in place in order for everything to survive, at least life as we understand it. Although I'm very interested to see if there's methanogenic life on Titan. I've talked about that before, but I'm not going to go to Titan. We're not talking about that today. Framrick says Mars has a lot of resources, but most of them are valuable only for the settlers: titanium, copper, chromium. Mars is more valuable as a staging point for the solar system resources such as the asteroid belt, right, and as a backup for humanity. I agree, Framrick. I think that's its main importance. And that's why I really like SpaceX. And that's why I like Elon's vision, is because it's not about, the Martian settlers aren't going to be going to get rich. They may end up being rich if they can exploit the asteroid belt and the huge wealth that's there, but that's not why they're going. They're going to explore, and they're going to save the human species, to preserve the human species. That's why they're going. And, I like the ideal behind that. And I think it's going to create some very idealistic people who do go. Framrick says it'll be interesting to see how the influence of Jupiter and Saturn and a large local moon composition of the solar system and how life develops. And currently, we only have one solar system to compare against. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, says Framrick. Thank you very much. And at this point, since we have over 200 people watching, once again, this is without any ads, no monetization. I've got my little Mars Base Alpha. They sent me the wrong size, but it's a little hoodie. And as you can see here, that's just an example of some of my merch that I'm doing right now. But it has this little insignia that was designed by by Ryan O'Connor, one of our own supporters here. And I think it's a really cool concept of a base on Mars and the little patch and everything that goes with it. But that's one of the pieces of merch that you might be able to get here to support what I do, especially these events, which are not, I don't get any monetization out of them. Okay, so enough advertising. All right. And thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. If you can't support this channel through any sort of means, monetarily, I totally understand. Just subscribe if you can, and I would be very, very grateful. Okay, let's see here. We do have a link from Deacon A Box. Hello, Deacon. I think you're brand new as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, that's interesting indeed. Very interesting creature. that you just put up there. Tardigrade. I'm gonna check that out. That's very interesting. Okay, I'm gonna read this. Water bears or moss piglets are a phylum of eight-legged segmented micro animals. They're first described by the German zoologist, et cetera, who called them little water bears. Very interesting indeed. I like that. That's really cool. So who knows? Yeah, who knows what we're gonna find there. Framrick says, do you think we should be launching fleets of starships or possibly revisit Buzz Aldrin and others' idea of a Mars cycler system, a permanent transit vessel, centrifuge for artificial gravity, good shielding, lots of cargo space, put it into Earth orbit and then set up on an Earth-Mars orbit cycle? You need to accelerate ships to meet it, then decelerate landers at the other end. Long cycle times, though. If there are long cycle times, the problem with that, of course, is interplanetary radiation. As long as you can and cosmic rays, as long as you can find ways to effectively deal with that. Wow. So Deacon, they sent to you the wrong size. Shit. I'll tell you, these guys are a pain. Teespring pisses me off sometimes. I don't know what the deal is with them, but anyway, sorry guys. Anybody who's experienced that, I apologize. To answer your question, Framrick, what is it going to take? And that's part of our discussion here. What is it really going to take to get 1 million people to Mars? That's a huge undertaking. We actually probably do need a fleet of ships on a cycler system in order to get that many people there, because we don't need to just get the 1 million people there. We need the cargo necessary to support them. A lot of habitation structures can be 3D printed out of what we have on the Martian surface, but we're still going to need a lot of cargo brought there. And that's going to take more than just what 1,000 starships can do. And that's a lot of friggin' starships, and yet still an amazing undertaking. So, the starships can get things started. But we're going to need more than that. And then we need to be able to support that many people, which is going to be challenging, very challenging indeed, to grow enough food to support them. It's going to have to be done stage by stage, bit by bit. Start very small, be very certain that we can be self-sustaining on a small level of maybe 12, 20 people, something like that, before we start expanding. I think that would be very important. With a cycler system, you could have better radiation shielding. That is true, Cyclonics, because you could have a big ship and therefore a lot of shielding, a lot of water, for example, or ice or something like that, used to provide protection from radiation. Yeah, because you don't have to worry about launching it off the surface. It is a pretty good idea, actually. There's a lot of, I'll tell you, I'm becoming more and more of an advocate of the idea of using the Starship more of a low Earth orbit to Mars orbit kind of craft than a all the way to Mars and try to land it there kind of craft. I tend to support more the idea of using something that big now, of course, it takes more fuel to decelerate into orbit, but it is doable. It requires a little over 500 tons worth of fuel to get the Starship from Earth all the way to Mars. Therefore, it would take double that actually less than double that in order to decelerate into a Martian orbit or to rendezvous with Phobos, which is one of my preferred methods, a base we set up there and use smaller craft to descend. If you don't have to worry about launching the thing, getting it off the planet, then it becomes a lot easier to put cosmic ray shielding on it because of less mass. A crashed Israeli spacecraft spilled tardigrades on the moon. Wow, interesting. Did any of them survive? We'll see. Hard to say. And if it's going to be hard for us to explore the solar system without contaminating something. It's going to be very, very difficult. We should try, especially until we know what's there. Probably do our best, but still, it's going to be tough. Cyclonic said, I would prefer Starship to be a low Earth orbit only ship that supplies orbiting assembly stations for bigger ships. I think that's a good use for it. And also you can build nuclear powered ships that way. And, of course, using nuclear power means that you can have more cargo. The more powerful the propulsion, the more cargo you can drive to Mars in a 6-month time frame, or 7 if it's only cargo. You can make it even a longer period of time. And nuclear power can drive huge amounts of cargo in a similar amount of time. Aren't tardigrades the secret to galactic transportation using hidden dimensions? Actually, to me, I think they look like something out of Dune, to be honest. Ouija Lego, hello. What do you think the best sites for the Martian colony SpaceX was considering the Arcadia Planitia? Yes, I think the Arcadia Arcadia is a good spot where the Chinese are looking to land and where the Viking landers went. And I don't know why the hell I'm forgetting where that is, but it's right adjacent to the Arcadia, a little bit west, I guess would be the way of expressing it. Somebody can tell me what region that is, but in any event, that region is known to have a massive subsurface lake there that would have some big advantages. So we know for certain that there's a lot of water there. Plus, we've already landed a Viking lander there. We've already gotten some information from the ground from that region. Is it the Amazonas Planitia? Utopia. Thank you, Utopia Planitia. Thank you so much. That's where that big subsurface frozen lake is the Utopia Planitia, and where the Chinese are looking to land their rover as well is Utopia. So that ought to be, in my opinion, that's a good spot. Although I have to admit, I've got a personal bias towards the Valles Marineris, simply because it's just such an incredible place. I think that we need to send probes there first in order to determine whether or not the Mariner Valley, as we call it, because the Mariner spacecraft was the first one to see it, has any water there. There's strong indications that it does because of the regular ice fogs that appear there on a regular basis that have been observed, but we don't know for certain. But it's a huge canyon. There are very large flat areas that we could establish ourselves there, and because the elevation is down. Atmospheres tend to get a little thicker in canyons. And so as a result, you get a little bit more protection from radiation as well. Plus lots of, caves, that sort of thing, and a lot of potential for exploring the geology of the region. I'm kind of a fan of having two spots, maybe Arcadia or Utopia, and then a smaller spot being at the Valles Marineris. I think that would be those would be two of my favorites. Subspace fungus. Okay, Framic says, imagine a pulsed fission fusion Mars cycler. Yes, I did an episode about this that's been fairly popular, actually. Starships for the Earth to the cycler, and then cycler to Mars, getting to Mars within 37 days, by the way. And then the Viking 1 lander okay, and then you covered that as well. But yeah, that would be an amazing thing. Have a cycler using pulsed fission fusion to provide the propulsion. You could get some incredible stuff out of that. We should be exploring more of that, and we are, but I don't think nearly enough. Yeah, Elon says there isn't enough water in the Mariner Valley to have a base. Yeah, and Cyclonic says he doubts that, and I do too. Where are all these ice fogs coming from then? I mean, we're talking ice fogs that are so huge that they would stretch all the way from coast to coast in the United States. How do you get an ice fog that big with no water? It just doesn't make any sense to me. I think that would be would make a big difference. And yeah, you're right. Ouija Lego, the protection from radiation. There's a lot of advantages to going there. To say nothing of the fact that it's just unlike anything else in the solar system. Canyon walls that are thousands and thousands of meters high. I mean, what a thing to see, when you wake up in the morning. That would be something that would definitely help our psyche on Mars, is to see astounding sights like that, every day, where you can't see stuff like that on Earth. It doesn't exist. And at least not in places where we can get to it. The Marianas Trench is beyond our reach, but we could go to the Valles Marineris. What a thing to wake up to. I think that would be a big help to us psychologically. Can we get Bridenstine to lead the logistics team for Mars colonization, since he'll have time on his hands soon? I hope so, Mad Lawyer. I think that would be an awesome thing. By the way, we have some new people. Once again, thank you very much for joining, for signing up on this. You know how to do it. Just to be clear, it's all in the description. It's $3 a month if is the minimum to be a Patreon supporter of this channel, and then you can join in on the conversation. I see that, and I'm saying it now because we have hundreds of people watching. So if you can join, please do. We would love to have you as part of the conversation. If not, just subscribe, and I'll be a very happy person. The Aldrin Cycler, add some starships or landers. Wow, I've never seen that picture of Buzz with his little cycler there. That's an amazing ship. I wonder who made that for him. And however, he does have a couple of Orions stuck on the back of it, which is kind of interesting. So it's definitely something designed for it kind of almost looks like the Martian base camp that I think that was designed by, no, it's not McDonnell Douglas. Anyway, one of the big companies designed a Martian base camp to have the Orion be part of it. Cyclonic says Mariner Valley is really close to the equator, where a space elevator or skyhook could be constructed. Yes, indeed. If we're looking at long-term benefits, the equator is a good spot for space elevators. Once we start looking at setting that up, and to me also, that's how we get large amounts of cargo down to the red planet and large numbers of people eventually, is to get a practical Martian space elevator, which is a hell of a lot easier to build than an Earth space elevator, way easier. And that's a way to get get a 1,000,000-person colony established. Googling Aldrin Cycler. Yeah, that's a pretty cool thing. I suppose maybe I should do a video about that. Another article, Tom Craver idea, Earth to Mars. Okay, I'm gonna have to check that one out. Thank you, Framrick. That's another benefit, by the way. We get lots of articles, lots of very knowledgeable people here. Framrick, by the way, is a nuclear physicist, and he is an amazing help to this channel. He gives me a lot of scientific information, and we have a lot of talent on this channel that makes it what it is. So really appreciate all of you guys and what you contribute. You guys do a hell of a lot to help out. So thank you for that. Johnny Spacer says, I predict Bridenstine will be employed by SpaceX after he leaves NASA. Let's hope so. That would be a great thing. He would be great at coming down to all the nuts and bolts of getting a colony established. not just the transportation, but, establishing the colony. All of this is going to be very challenging. So Framix says the first few crews are professional astronauts and scientists. When do you start sending settlers? When are families allowed? Ethically, should we recommend pregnancies on Mars when youngins will be born in a higher radiation, hostile environment, or should there be a bonus paid to give birth on Earth? Well, that is a strong question, but here's the deal. There is no way that we are going to be able to have a self-sustaining colony on Mars unless we can have kids there. It's not going to be possible. If the whole idea is to use Mars as a lifeboat, then you've got to be able to have children there. These children may never be able to come back to Earth. They may not be able to, but there is no way of establishing a self-sustaining colony unless you can have children there. I would say, of course, experiment with monkeys first. With Rhesus, it's a bad day to be a Rhesus monkey, I think, is a common expression used when you're talking about finding cures for diseases and that sort of thing. Take some Rhesus monkeys there and see what happens to their offspring before we have humans do it. But still, we're going to have to do it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We can't just depend on people coming from Earth if Mars is truly a lifeboat. Cully says large thorium deposits at Arcadia Planitia could be useful. Yeah, definitely. I didn't actually know that there are thorium deposits at the at Planitia. I think that would be an amazing thing. Wow, I did not know that. I think that would be an amazing thing indeed. Yeah, absolutely. If we find those kinds of deposits, then nuclear power is definitely something that we should get into there. We need alternate power sources on Mars, and I think that's going to be an obvious thing to any colony that gets established. We're going to require that in order to be able to survive. And that's why the whole thing about why dust storms are such a danger, because they'll block out the sun and kill our solar panels. Well, no, they're not, if we just plan properly and we have more than one power source. Or, as Framrick suggested to me one time, and I've suggested, have the solar panels in orbit and transmit the power down via microwave. You'll lose some of the energy going through the dust, but not all of it, and you'll be able to at least keep the life support going. So that would be another possible solution to it. Solar on Mars, solar in space, those two combined might be enough. It's going to be part of the experiment. But yeah, we're going to need trained astronauts and scientists. But we're going to need a few. We're going to need a few normal people from normal walks of life too, going on some of these initial expeditions, because we already know that astronauts can handle long stays in tin cans. We already know that they can handle that psychologically. Do we know that the average person can manage it? We don't know that yet, and we're going to have to be able to do it. Hello, alien zookeeper. Don't worry, the sunglasses are coming back. I don't wear these during the live streams just so I can read this, but the sunglasses will definitely be coming back. Just a visual transformation that's going on. That's all. Like the idea of centripetal nurseries for Martian children, give them 1G for most of their development. I think that would be an interesting idea, Cyclonics. One thing that might drive them crazy, of course, is being locked up in these centripetal nurseries, especially if you were, 12. Wouldn't that drive you nuts, being locked up in something like that? It depends on, as we study this process, how many hours are people going to need to stay in that kind of environment in order to stay healthy? Only an hour or two, maybe, and the rest of it they can spend in 1/3 gravity and do just fine. It's going to be hard to say. But yeah, that is one way of doing it, and have them centripetal nursery subsurface as well. so that they're protected from the radiation too. That's of course the safest way to have kids on Mars. Deacon, yes, Cully, thorium salt reactors to survive dust storms. Yes, I think we already talked about that, but yeah, thanks, Deacon. I appreciate it. Okay, so we keep going here. Framrick, Arthur C. Clarke had a few nice novels. Islands of the Sky, in the Sky, yeah, that was a good one. The Sands of Mars, yep. Families had kids born on Mars, but there's a pilgrimage to Earth for culture, health, etc. And in some novels, there's a birthing station in Mars orbit with 1G from gravity for pregnant ladies and newborns. Get them used to 1G, then when visiting Earth, use rotating space stations to get them accustomed again. Complicated, but maybe doable, maybe what we have to do in order to make the whole thing work. I think that will be a neat thing. Would a super powerful microwave beam interact harmfully with Earth and Mars atmospheres? I don't think it's going to be damaging to the atmosphere. And also, the microwaves are going to be spread over a very large area with solar power generated from space. With a receiver that's a couple kilometers in diameter to kind of spread out the microwaves over a large region. So it's not a super focused microwave death ray. It's more of a transmission of microwaves over a large region, and in a region that isn't inhabited for the most part. I mean, you might have people checking in on the equipment from time to time, but in areas that you don't have large numbers of human beings exposed to it, and then just transmit the electricity via wires, do it the old-fashioned way, back to a Martian city or to a city here. Any of it might work. Andy says, yes, orbital power mining is a great way to set up power distribution with other backup systems on the surface. Yes, backup, redundancy. We've got to have that. And as long as we have it, then these things don't represent any danger to us, any serious danger anyway. Included amongst the normal people on Mars, mad lawyers, please. Yes, indeed. I think that it's important that we do get ordinary people there as soon as we can. So we really understand what the consequences are going to be. It's one thing to send a professional there, somebody who's been, dreaming their whole lives of doing this and being dedicated to it like that, as opposed to somebody who may not be as committed, or maybe, they've been excited about it for the last 20 years, but maybe not since they were born, that sort of thing. Let's find out, what happens to them psychologically. It's important for us to know these things. Framrick says, don't underestimate how much influence Neuralink or holographic VR, AR environments could have. Feeling blue, plug in and swim underwater at the barrier reef. Yeah. Let's hope that we can do that. Let's definitely hope that becomes a reality soon. That will be a great way of treating people from a psychiatric standpoint on a lot of levels, not just on Mars, but here. If we can start providing VRs that provide more soothing environments for people who are suffering from anxiety and depression, or even far more serious conditions, those sorts of things can help people from a therapeutic standpoint. Yeah, very good point, Framrick. I really think that's going to be important. Andy says, plumbers, you'll always need a plumber. Hell yeah. And you know what? That's something that I want to mention. We finally have 7 people on the ISS again. We finally have a full crew, as it was originally intended, roughly about that many people. And the reason that 4-person crews have been so hard pressed is because they've been doing maintenance for so much of the time, and they haven't been able to do the science. And these are people who know how to do science. They're highly educated. They should be doing the science. So therefore, we should have other people doing the maintenance. So we're going to need maintenance people going along with highly trained astronauts. Why not? Why have highly trained astronauts fixing pipes or electricians and that sort of thing. It's just not necessary. Send those people as well, people who are specialized in that, as opposed to, having microbiologists fixing electronics. It's ridiculous, and yet that's what we've had on the ISS, and we need to have that on a Martian colony as well, as soon as possible. Martians should at least sleep in 1G and then leave for work. That would be interesting. I wonder what that would be like, trying to sleep in 1G. I just went through the simulation at a full 3Gs not that long ago. That was a really amazing experience. I have to admit, I was a little concerned because I had no idea what the state of my heart was before I went on the thing and got my chest felt like it was going to collapse. It was amazing. But at the same time, it was super exciting. I really enjoyed the experience, and to know that it was the same number of G's as people on the space shuttle went through, that's some pretty cool stuff. Alien Zookeeper says we're going to need destructive testing of Martian colonists, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately, that is true. Some Martian colonists are just going to die. There's no way around it. But you know what? People die on the roads every day just for the practicality of getting, people from place to place faster so that our society can function. We don't need it that way. We could set up our own little monorail system to, in every city, and out to every small town and such, and do things that way without us having to invest in our own hunks of steel or hunks of metal that we use to kill each other every day. We don't have to be set up that way, but we do, and lots of people get killed in the process. Where's all the people protesting that? So I think that, it's going to be necessary in order to make that happen. Dan Steele, hello. Why 1 million residents? This seems quite arbitrary. I agree. Why would the initial colony be in the range of 1,000? 1 million is too lofty to start. The initial colony would be a lot smaller. I agree. And I agree with you, Dan. We don't need 1 million people on Mars. I think it'd be great to have 1 million people on Mars. But yeah, it is kind of arbitrary. In order to have enough people to survive, from a genetic standpoint, you only need about 150. 500 would definitely be enough. So if you got 1,000 or so split up amongst 3 or 4 different settlements on Mars, that would be enough to ensure the survival of the human species. You don't need 1 million people. I agree. Not at all. The power density is quite low, quite diffuse, spread over a large area. Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess it took me forever to get caught up on the microwave beam thing. No birds to cook in Mars atmosphere with microwave transmissions. It could be more concentrated. Yeah, it could be. Anything we build for generating large amounts of power could be weaponized. As we learn with nuclear reactors on a regular basis, we're always having to keep an eye on making sure that it doesn't get weaponized. The good thing is that we do have some very good anti-satellite weaponry these days. So if it looks like somebody's going to set up a microwave death beam in orbit, you just shoot the damn thing down. So before they finish it, I think that would probably be a pretty easy solution to that. Framic says, I keep banging on about it, but it comes down to power, solar, nuclear. More power equals more civilization. Yes, I agree. Kardashev would definitely have agreed with you were he still alive. The poor guy only died last year, too. Such a sad thing. More power for life support, growing, transport, and by the way, making fuel, too. You need a lot of power for that. Very efficient solar, liquid fluoride thorium reactors, small scale proton boron fusion, and we will explode across the solar system. Yes, Framic, I agree. I know it's your specialty. I know that you're into that sort of thing, and it's the kind of work that you do. It's the kind of work that my daughter is going to be doing as well, by the way. She is in the middle of her college education on a full scholarship to Clemson University, which is highly respected for engineering. But yeah, Yeah, power is everything. Power is everything. Ouija Lego VR will keep normal people on the trip to Mars from going insane. I agree. I think that if we can start to create something like that, it would be a big help. Going ballistic. Perhaps Mars will invent a toilet that doesn't unplug and export that to Earth. Yeah, well, I'll tell you, as we develop new technologies on Mars, and it's going to be a lot of smart people who go there, those new technologies can be patented and they can be sent here, and make a lot of money. History majors needed on Mars to explain the idiotic mistakes we made on Earth over the last 2,000 years. So I'm going to. Let's hope so. Yeah. There's actually a lot of things that I could do in that regard. Nikos Kouris, hello. I think you're pretty new as well. Thank you so much for joining us. In order to sustain a Martian city, don't we need to figure out how to make Martian soil suitable for farming ASAP? I feel we desperately need soil samples to work with. Yes, we do. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of experimentation on simulated Martian regolith. You take out the perchlorates, you introduce nitrogen, and you can start doing that by starting out with hydroponics and aquaponics, get decaying vegetation out of that and introduce that as a fertilizer into the Martian soil and start growing things out of the Martian soil. You can start making that happen. Bring samples back, says Framrick. Check what grows the best. Potatoes, maybe. Yes, I would say bring some samples back, but check them on the lunar gateway first. Make sure that they don't have anything dangerous. Excuse me, but that's one of the purposes of the lunar gateway, isn't it? Is to make sure that we can check those samples to make sure that there's nothing dangerous to the human population on it. 100 people enough to repopulate. 1,000 is a safety factor. 1,000,000 is a milestone, says Cully. Yes, indeed, I agree. 500 people to maintain the genetic pool. Less than Suffolk. Oh my God. So you have your jokes about that too. Well, then, yeah, less than, well, no, I'm not going to say places in America where that's the case as well. I'll get myself in trouble there. 6 figures up the road. Okay, yes, very funny. And by the way, yes, we definitely have a lot of that here in the United States too. Jokes about different regions where you only need one family to sustain a population. Okay, Johnny Spacer says, "I'm sure we'll find uranium on Mars." I agree. I'm sure we will too. If it's anything like us, and Mars is very similar to Earth, we will find it. Oh, well, thank you. I guess you just, I'm sorry, that I didn't recognize that, Nikos. I guess you just don't, you're right. You are quiet, but thank you so much for contributing and thanks for what you do. I really appreciate it. For supporting this channel. You make this world go round. You make these things happen. Supporters like you, especially, and you know what I'm talking about. Andy, 300 plus watching. Yes, indeed. One more time. This is not a monetized event. I have this Mars base alpha, a Mars base alpha hoodie that was designed by one of our own people that I'm pushing right now. And there's lots of different items from the Mars base alpha line that I have. You can get it right on YouTube. These are ways to support this channel and to keep things going. If you don't want to support it from a Patreon standpoint, there are other ways to do it. Since the Mars core has stopped spinning and is cooled, could we mine it? Wow, that would be ambitious. Unlike Earth, you could get a lot further down and the heat wouldn't be an issue. Yes. However, we do believe that there is magma under there. We've come to that conclusion. The large subsurface lake that exists at the Martian North Pole, I think, either North or South Pole, is being heated by a large lake of magma. So there is some magma there. We don't know how much, but there's more magma on Mars than we ever thought. And at least from our current discoveries seem to indicate that. Um, a similar story in Indiana, says Avinash. Very funny. Okay, so yeah, we could maybe, but we're not entirely certain what's deep under the surface of Mars. We know there's Mars quakes. We know those exist, and we're not entirely certain what's causing all of them. Maybe it's we do know there's some active geology there. Maybe it's landslides. Maybe it's meteoroid impacts. We're not certain, but these are things that could present a danger to a future colony. Mars quakes, anything that could, screw up our life support could be a real serious problem. And of course, a meteoroid impact could mean game over, depending on the size of the meteoroid. Hit Mars with a few ice comets to deposit more water and spin it up to increase the gravity. That could be done. That definitely could be done. Turn it into a big permanent magnet. Let's see here. Alien Zookeeper. Somebody said redundancy, and that's what a million people is all about. That's true. That's the smallest economy they think they could reach, take off, and infinitely expand. Good point, Alien Zookeeper. I never really thought of that, but that's a good point. To have a really legitimate economy, that's what it takes. Deacon, astonishingly good idea, Doctor. Dr. Strangelove, one of the best movies ever made. Animals could be bred and slaughtered. Anyway, what a movie. I guess maybe I'm gonna have to watch that sometime in the next few days once I get my own video done here after this one's done. Mr. President, we must not allow a mine shaft gap. Yes, what a movie. And for those of you who don't know what the hell I'm talking about, see that movie. See Dr. Strangelove, one of the best movies ever made. Ever made. Okay. So let's see here. So we've talked about, we're talking about the size of the colony, what's necessary in order to ensure the future of the human species. We've talked some about food. We've talked about some innovative ways of keeping the radiation off of us. We've talked about ways of dealing with psychiatric problems to our population there. Also, EVA is going to be a big issue there too. We have not yet tested spacesuits, out in vacuum-like environments for days on end. When we send astronauts out on a spacewalk, that's actually a rare occurrence. What happens when it's a daily occurrence? That's something else that we need to keep in mind. We're going to have EVA suits that are really solid, really reliable, and are going to have to be well maintained. Otherwise, your EVA suit goes and you're dead. So it's a serious issue. Framrick says Dr. Strangelove may actually apply to Moon and Mars occupations. We might enter a solar system Cold War. I hope not, but yeah, it could very well be headed that way. Very much so. Excuse me. Will we need communication satellites on Mars for the million-person colony? And gee, who could possibly provide those? Yes, well, that will obviously be SpaceX and Starlink. I think we'll definitely need something like that, and I think it's a very good idea to put that in place. Daisy chain it back to Earth. Yes, indeed. We obviously are going to have to be concerned about security too. It is theoretically possible, for example, to hack the Curiosity rover. How much worse would that be if some freak decides to go and hack our life support systems on Mars? We're going to have to, that's another potential danger. things that we're going to have to really keep in mind, for long-term habitation there. Things that people don't talk about. That's, to me, that's a million times more dangerous than radiation would be, some hacker deciding he wants to wipe out the Martian colony for fun. Yeah, we definitely need to make sure that we have a strong, the best possible internet security that you can imagine. Yes, unlike on ISS and Luna, Mars requires environmental suits rather than spacesuits. The atmosphere will interact with your suit much more, such as your temperature. Yes, very much true. You'll require a totally different suit on Mars, a very different suit. I really hope that the biosuit that MIT came up with, I hope that becomes a reality, because that's a cool thing. The biosuit, for those of you who don't know what that is, look it up. It is a really amazing breakthrough idea to make a functional, flexible, and practical suit for the Martian surface, to where Martian athletes could compete, in Olympic games and stuff like that. Some pretty cool stuff. But look up the biosuit sometime. Going Ballistic says, as a kid, my jeans never lasted more than a day without needing an iron-on knee patches. Imagine me on Mars. Yeah. And we're going to need computer experts there too. So I agree with you, Ouija. Definitely, we're going to need really good computer experts, as I said before, to protect us, to protect our colony, from any possible dangers. Now that we have a lot of people here as well, I want to say to the future, they've got their own. They have their own live stream coming up within a half hour after I finish this one, 30 minutes. After I'm done with this, they're starting. Go pay them a visit. Great folks, and they are largely responsible for making this channel successful, because they've been such a huge help to me ever since I got started. Great people. By all means, go over and support them. Reckon we can end up with organic EVA suits that process our own exhaled oxygen and Martian sunlight and CO2 to produce oxygen. That's a great idea. Once again, new technologies that we should be focusing on rather than just relying on the stuff we've always used. Cyclonic says, perhaps like the Svalbard seed vault here on Earth, we could send seeds of plants and eggs of animals to Mars, just in case Earth is destroyed and we want to make it again. Yeah, that's a very good idea. That really makes Mars a lifeboat, not just for humanity, but for Earth in general. Yes, make sure to go to YouTube and search for 2, and that is the number 2, the future. To the future. Make sure you go there after this is done, and you will find their live stream. It's super cool. Andy Brown, on a more serious note, professional astronomy community getting fired up about low Earth orbit communications networks. Yeah, I think the professional astronomy community does need to be respected. I think that there are ways for us to make everything work properly, to get it all to work properly, just because they contribute a lot towards the defense of this planet. They're the ones who find a lot of the unknown near-Earth asteroids, comets, that sort of thing. They really contribute a lot. Eugenian, hello. I'm sorry. I guess I have embarrassed myself once already by not recognizing one of you. But if you're new as well, hello. But couldn't we drop loads of cyanobacteria on Mars to attempt to produce oxygen? Could hydrogen be collected from solar wind and produce water with that oxygen? Boy, that's an interesting question. Very interesting ideas. I do think that using bacteria in general to produce more atmosphere on Mars is a good idea. Everybody who talks about, well, there's not enough CO2, on Mars, total to create an atmosphere, and so we can't do terraforming. That's just because you're not thinking outside the box. There are ways to do it. Like I say, just the perchlorates alone, we're not talking about CO2 there. We're talking about oxygen. But there's a lot of perchlorates on Mars, a lot spread across that planet, and it can be produced through biological means and converted into oxygen as a byproduct by, and not necessarily even by bacteria, just by enzymes created by the bacteria. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to at least get get the concept of terraforming started. And by the way, you don't have to nuke the poles to do it. I think that's going a little too fast there. I would definitely store seeds, genetic material, etc. on Mars. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Bury it in the Martian CO2 ice just in case. Yeah, that'd be a hell of an idea. Off topic, says Ouija. Have you ever considered giving a TED talk or something to educate more people about the importance of space travel and expanding beyond the Earth? No, I have never considered that. I would be amazed if I even got invited to do something like that. But wow, that would be cool. I would love to do that. I love speaking in front of crowds. I don't just like locking myself in my room and talking over the internet. I love speaking to crowds as well. That would be a fantastic thing, but I wouldn't begin to know how you would do that. I can nominate myself for one on their website. Well, why not? Maybe I could give it a shot. Give it a try. Who knows? I do have a lot of subscribers now, so maybe they would take me seriously. And I have nominated some, or rather interviewed some very prominent people in the space industry as well. So hello, Ricker. I can see you're typing there. That's cool. We have a little lull here and we're starting to run short on time. But once again, thanks all of you, hundreds of people who are watching. Please subscribe if you have not already done so. Like and subscribe. And you know how to support this channel. It's all in the description as to how to do so. And one last look, I promise this is the last one, at the Mars Base Alpha, the Phobos line of products that I'm starting to put out. I think that that's going to be that would just be a great way to support this channel. If you're not cool with the whole concept of Patreon and you'd like to get something in return, I really like that one just because it's created by a very talented person who's done actual space patches for actual space companies. And he made that one for me. So I thought that was pretty cool. The Boeing mug is feeling threatened. Yes, indeed. We're we're about 8,500 away from the destruction of the Boeing mug. We need to get to 40,000. And yes, that's going to be quite a moment, I think. But we still have 10 minutes left. So we still have a little bit more time to discuss the subject. It is a huge subject, kind of an overwhelming one. But we've talked, power, I think is Framrick keeps writing that, but I think he's right. Power is a huge thing, and we need to have several different kinds of sources of power for life support, for making fuel, for food, for everything's going to require power. Maybe not as much food once we get the whole notion of growing food in Martian soil, greenhouses, using mirrors reflecting sunlight, that sort of thing. We might be able to manufacture fuel that way with not quite as much power being used. The machines will work here on Earth. The lubricants, metals will work on Mars with extreme temperatures swings. Yep. We can't say for certain. We do know that the machines that we have put there have proven to be very effective and have lasted a much longer time than we ever imagined that they would. And it's amazing that the rovers that we've put there have proven to be as effective. And there are some positives to Mars as well. There's no rust, there's none of those kinds of issues to worry about, or not as much rust anyway. Oxidizing, that kind of thing. So there's some big positives as well as negatives. What will we do with our consumer waste? God forbid we have any. Well, Kali, it would be best, I think, for us to make sure that we create a society where we reuse everything. We've been very bad at doing that here. I think Mars is where we do our best to be successful. You know, to recycle as much as we possibly can on Mars, to set the blueprint for how things should be done on Earth, and Mars would be a great environment to do that. Recount the subscribers in Pennsylvania. Oh my God, no, don't talk about that. Okay, Bramrick, how much of a Mars settlement should be Earth government backed, and how much should be private backed? Should people on Earth pay taxes to get Mars going? Yes, they should. And the reason they should is because the future of the human species could depend on it. The survival of the human race, maybe not them, but you know what? I mean, people's taxes go to support a lot of people who they may never meet anyway. So why should it not also be used to support the lifeboat for the Earth? I think that that's very, very important to the future of the human race. And so therefore, yeah, some taxes should go into that. Deimos into a giant landfill. Yes, well, I think Deimos is going to have its uses in a lot of ways. Andy says, though, that there's this thing about a vast armada setting off from Earth to Mars. I don't think it'll go that way, but a case of progressive expansion. I tend to agree with you, Andy. I don't think it's going to be a Battlestar Galactica thing the way Elon describes. That would be really tough to even make happen, to refuel that many starships in orbit that quickly so they all make the launch window, 1,000 ships. That seems really, really tough. Seems to me more of a progressive thing, the way you describe it. Framrick says in an Arthur C. Clarke novel, Sands of Mars, they turned Phobos into a miniature sun by using a sci-fi subatomic chain reaction. Wow, what a thing. Yeah, I remember that now. You remember this is like 35 or maybe 40 years ago. Okay. Yeah, it looks like Ricker is, I'm not sure what Ricker is doing there, but it looks like he's starting to, but yes, Deimos will definitely be a good fuel station. Nikos says, talking about suits, is anyone working on reversing tension on exoskeleton suits to simulate the gravity effects on our body? That is a really interesting idea, and I think that would exoskeletons. People have been talking a lot about that already, building exoskeleton suits for a variety of different purposes, industrial, that sort of thing. So maybe that would be a good use to negate gravity problems for us. Ouija says reuse waste for habitation, maybe even nuclear fusion, like Back to the Future. Yes. Uh, yes, reuse as much as we possibly can. Anything that we're able to do. Self-contained biodomes. The European Space Agency has a program that's doing that. A completely self-contained, everything gets reused. They're almost up to 100% efficiency with that, by the way. They're almost there. So, much more efficient than the ISS, just so you know. It would be a much more incentivized capitalistically on Mars to make a cycle of materials than Earth. Yeah, interesting point, Collie. Gravity simulation spacesuit. Yes, indeed, a spacesuit that squeezes. Thank you, Fremrick. Another link here on the Discord server for folks to check out. Very cool. I'll have to keep that in mind. Cyclonics, Martians would not have access to plastic, so a lot of everyday things we take for granted would have to be made from metals or biological material. Another thing, Cyclonics, that's been brought up many, many, many times is, doggone it, from volcanic fiber. It's not volcanic fiber, but rather basaltic fiber. That took me a while to figure that one out. Basaltic fiber is something that we could make on Mars. It's already been experimented with quite a bit here on Earth, and Mars has a lot of remnants from their volcanic period. So basaltic fiber might be a good alternative to plastics for us to manufacture things there. Long-term sleep-wake study in a cave-situated environment was reported on by Nat Geo years ago, and without solar cues, the guy in the cave settled into very long wake-sleep cycles. Very interesting, Ricker. I did not know that. Instead of spacesuit ports, mech suit ports. That's a great idea. I like that. Eugenian, this may actually be our last comment here, just because I have another video to plunge into. Actually, I've already plunged into it, of course, but still, I'm going to try to get that finished and released today, as best as I can. So, in any event, but for if somebody wants to make a final comment, though, I'd very much like you to do that. And once again, don't forget to the future, to the number, to the future. They're doing their live stream within 30 minutes after this one. With enough sugar production, plastics would be possible. Interesting, with corn maybe, huh? Very interesting point. Very interesting indeed. Maybe we could. Lots of ideas, lots of ways to make sure that our efforts of building a self-sustaining colony on Mars becomes a success. So thank you very much, everybody, for participating. Once again, you know how to support this channel. Just subscribe if you haven't already. Throw a like on there. So until we're ready for a 1 million person colony, or until we're at the point to where we're going to have that self-sustaining economy, that second lifeboat for the human race that's going to be able to survive for the long term on one of the most amazing places in the solar system, the red planet, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.